Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today I got a fun and exciting episode, guys, this evening, as we're going to be taking a look at more Nintendo 64 decompilations and recompilations that you may be playing soon. That's absolutely awesome because we've been talking a lot about decomps and recomps on the channel recently, and everyone seems to be very excited about it. So we're going to go over 3 projects today that are in the works, and 1 project that is decompiled completely but doesn't really seem to have much forward momentum as far as a recomp is concerned, unless I don't know about it. It's being done in the shadows. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, got a Patreon link down below as well. But one of the recompilations in the works is going to be Banjo-Kazooie. And before you go down below and yell at me for using the word soon, I always caveat that with it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. You get to define soon. But for some reason, some people get angry if it's not available next week, so don't yell at me. And honestly, getting a Banjo-Kazooie recompilation would be absolutely outstanding, because it's one of those games, even on Nintendo 64 with its graphical stylings, it looks fantastic, but it definitely doesn't run at a frame rate that's going to be consistent. Now, back when this game came out in the Nintendo 64 era, we didn't so much mind low frame rates. We were happy to get what we got because we were just really seeing 3D show up in our homes. But now in 2025, when you go back and play a game like this, if you don't have nostalgia for it, it is very likely that you might just decide it's a little bit too blurry, it's a little bit too slow for you to enjoy. If you're trying to show this game off to your kids or a younger generation, they might not be able to hang with it based upon that as well. So being able to get a recomp of this project, getting widescreen support, everything else, the quality of life improvements from a recomp would be absolutely outstanding. Just imagine Banjo-Kazooie in something like 16:9 with 90 or even 120 frames per second, maybe even dual analog controls so you could control the camera at your own free will. That would be absolutely awesome because this is one of the greatest 3D platformers of all time, but I totally understand that if you go back to it today, it can feel a little bit antiquated. And just so you know, I'm playing this on the Mr. FPJ Turbo Core, so you can get some more frame rates out of it if you so want. But it's one of those things. Imagine going from a turbo frame rate to something like 120 frames per second. That would absolutely be spectacular. And while it doesn't mean something like the Bear Waker is going to work in a recomp, once you get the decompilation and recompilation going for the base game, it does help aid towards actually getting some other versions of Banjo-Kazooie working. It might be one of those things, maybe in 2 years or 4 years, some of Kirko Mod's games would be working in the recompiled version of something like Banjo-Kazooie. Definitely isn't a promise, but it is something forward-looking that you could basically just kind of get quasi-excited about. But honestly, the fact that there is a team out there working on a Banjo-Kazooie recomp that might be out this year just absolutely 100% does it for me. Now moving over to my personal favorite, it's Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards. There have been some previews shown of this online, but they are not my footage, so I'm not using it for this video. But this is another one of those games, absolutely outstanding 2.5D platformer, and maybe my favorite 3D Kirby game of all time outside of the most recent Switch release. I've loved this on Nintendo 64, and even though it doesn't really need a high frame rate, it would definitely benefit from one. And this is another one that would look spectacular in 16:9 because even though it isn't a 3D platformer, it is comprised entirely of 3D assets, which means it would be very effective if you did extend it out into 16:9 support. And just think about having that internal rendering resolution bump, you'd get the screen clearer and everything would just pop a little bit more. I'd love to play this one on my 4K OLED as a recomp with all of the modern graphical improvements, but still those same primary colors I think would absolutely just pop on an OLED. And it's one of those things, the soundtrack for this game is awesome, and hearing it recomped would be great as well. So it's going to be your first soundtrack sample, 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with more. I mean, honestly, the soundtrack to Kirby 64 has always been one of my favorite soundtracks of all time on the Nintendo front, and just getting even better audio, even better visuals, even better performance out of this game would just absolutely do it for me. I just feel like this is one of those games, if you know it and you've played it, you love it, but it's a game that maybe not everyone played back in the day, because this definitely doesn't get the same acclaim as something like Super Mario 64, and while it didn't revolutionize the overall 3D platform space like Mario 64 did, it still deserves all the love in the world. And I feel like this is the type of game, if you do have have kids out there and there was a recompiled version of it ready to play, you'd be able to just jump in, show it to them, and they would absolutely fall in love with it, especially if you didn't hand them a 3-prong controller like the Nintendo 64 controller, because I feel like that confuses pretty much every kid out there today. Now moving over to Zelda 64, obviously we have talked about the Majora's Mask version of this game a ton, but you're going to see it says soon Ocarina of Time. It is interesting that they started with Majora's Mask, the second game, and they're working on the first, but if you haven't played the recomp of Majora's Mask, I can't stress it enough. It just recently got mod support. I did a video on that last week, so I will leave a link in the description below. It's basically just the de facto perfect way to play something like Majora's Mask, especially with all the mods coming in. You can do new texture mods, you can just basically mod the game to your heart's content, or you can play it straight up vanilla but still get the widescreen 16:9 support, the dual analog for camera movement, and every other quality of life improvement. Imagine that coming over to Ocarina of Time, because that in fact is what is in development. Now again, when I use the word soon, I just mean it is coming, so don't go yell at me and say I'm a liar down below. Those comments always surprise me. I have no time frame on these things, I just know they're in development, and trust me, if it's anything like my life, time goes by very quickly, and before you know it, you'll just get a notification one day and say it's out, because the NSO version of the game might look prettier, but it is not the best way to play in my opinion. It's one of those things that just has some weird stutters that I do not love, and while the original Nintendo 64 version of the game definitely does hold up, just taking the entire world of Ocarina of Time and giving it the same Majora's Mask recomp treatment is going to be so much fun. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me, of the two Zelda games, which do you prefer, Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time? And I will have a part 2 to this video about recomps in the works, and there are some Zelda fan games as well that should be working in recomps eventually, so I love the fact that they're even going the extra mile and trying to build into the recomps some of the fan games which I do think rival what Nintendo did back in the day. Leave me that comment about your favorite down below. Now on the topic of decompilations that don't really seem to have any sort of recomp projects going right now, this is Paper Mario. It's been 100% decompiled, but the reality is the skill set takes to actually decompile something versus recompiling it into a source port is a completely different tool set, a completely different experience space. So that's why you see something like Paper Mario mentioned as being 100% decompiled, but there really doesn't seem to be any movement on actually porting the game like you've seen with stuff like Majora's Mask or even the most recent Dinosaur Planet recomp. So hopefully this is one that a team does pick up on. It might be one of those things, the 2D aesthetic of it definitely doesn't feel like it needs that recomp treatment as much in my opinion, but your opinion could be totally different down below. Tell me, recomp or not on this one? I'm sure most people will say yes, but Paper Mario is an outstanding game, and it really was one of the first titles that got talked about as far as decompiling the source code is concerned. But that's the reality of decomps and recomps. Just because you have 100% of the source code doesn't mean anyone's come along yet and actually tried to recompile it into something that'll run on Windows or Linux, or if you're lucky, Mac, because obviously the Zelda 64 Majora's recomp just got Mac support added as well, so our Macintosh friends out there getting in on the fun. Now I do think this will look absolutely outstanding as a recomp, but it's one of those things, there's so many different Nintendo 64 games out there that could get this treatment once the source code is decompiled. And just so you know, there's more than one way to do a recomp. I'm just talking about the decompilation to recomp pipeline right now, and for every project that we know about that we can talk about on the channel, I'm sure there's teams out there working on stuff in secrecy that basically nobody, myself included, know about. And that's one of those things. It's exciting to know that maybe you wake up next week and you'll get the news that a Nintendo 64 game has been recompiled that you had no idea anyone was even working on. But Paper Mario is one of those situations. If a team wants to come along and start recompiling it, the source code decomp is 100% complete per the team that worked on it, so the assets are there, the information is there. It just takes man hours for people to sit down and actually do the coding to bring this to us, and trust me, I'm sure it is hundreds upon hundreds of hours, blood, sweat, and tons of tears. But if I had to pick one game that I'm most excited about as far as an upcoming recomp is concerned, it's got to be Kirby 64, and I think it's just down to the fact that I love the overall colorways this game uses, its whimsy, its charm, and it's just straight up sense of fun. I remember playing this back in the day on Nintendo 64 when it came out. I fell in love with it, and to this day I still think it's one of the top 5 Nintendo 64 games of all time. I'm sure people definitely disagree with that, maybe put it in the top 20 or so, but it just hit me in the right spot in life to be absolutely excited when I first played it, and I'd say I probably play this game start to finish once every couple years just for the nostalgia alone, let alone the fact that it is an amazing 2D platformer. And if we got this thing in 4K OLED, all of the quality of life improvements. I just think it would absolutely shine, bring it to a modern audience, and make people who love the game have that much more fun. But trust me, decomps and recomps are the hot new thing, and you're probably going to see a lot more projects announced and maybe even released this year, because these are all in development outside of the actual Paper Mario footage I showed you, and it'll be fun to see who gets to the finish line first. But you tell me, if you could make one appear of the 3 I showed you in the video, which would it be? But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.